Hi. Speak and pause.
That looks like an antique cabinet behind you, Vivian.
And yes, it is. It has a weird handle that doesn't look appropriate, but
It's
otherwise,
nice.
it is nice. And it happens to totally match the wood of the dining room. You see all this crap. You see, you can't.
Oh, like Wayne's apartment. Very nice.
Yeah, we happened to just find it, and it houses
Uh,
all a lot of photographs. Is what's in there in case you're
yeah.
curious. How
Behind
are
me is
you?
concrete.
Is that what the walls are in
Well,
CV?
the part of the wall is actually a column, which is hi Wayne.
Is that
Hello.
is that the Ponte Vecchio?
No, the Ponte Vecchio is in Florence.
Florence. And so
This is
what's that?
this is a chateau in France.
Oh, got it
Oh,
wrong.
I knew it was French.
Well, you're better
How
than
is
I am.
Wayne?
I think that's Chinoso. Wine is fine.
Good.
Hey, Omar. Hi, Paola.
Hi, good
Hey,
night,
Wayne.
everybody.
So, are you with us today, Paola?
Yes, for the duration of the meeting.
Okay. Hey, Rosie. Rosie's muted.
Hey, how's everyone?
Good, good.
Jim, are you taking virtual classes right now?
Yes, I'm
What are you
taking
doing?
Introduction to Film and Media Studies.
Oh,
I
really?
now just watched Citizen Kane again, but with more educated eyes.
Oh,
Very good movie.
Where are you taking those courses?
Columbia.
Ah,
We can all take free classes from being in our zip code. Hey, Simeon.
Hey, Vivian.
hi, Simon. How are you?
Wayne, good to see you.
And I see we have Tim Anderson with us. We have a few of the team members from the, I guess, the Dominican Studies Institute, who will be speaking with us later.
Good evening. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes. One, two, three, four, five. So I am expecting Chris. He said he would be here. Have not heard from Steve, but it's early yet.
He'll be the late Steve Simon, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't need to take my notes. I'm
Well,
poised today.
I said I'm expecting Chris. Chris is not logged in yet, so
All right. I remain poised.
va bene.
Thank you so much, Vivian, because if I were forced to take notes, then I would have to concentrate on that, and I wouldn't pay attention to the meeting. And of course, that would be a tragedy.
Well, I worried about the same thing, but it is what it is.
Well, you're a week or two younger than I am.
Yeah, maybe. Go,
I
you
haven't
haven't
seen
lost
you in
your
a while,
focus.
Manny.
What?
I haven't seen Manny in a while.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Hi.
How are you, Vivian? How are you, Wayne?
Good.
Good.
There's Chris.
Hi, Chris. So far, we have 15.
Chris, you got to unmute yourself.
attendees.
Oh, hey. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Thank
Good to see you.
Good. Hanging in there.
Like the rest of us.
That's a nice background, Wayne.
Yes, it's from a vacation nearly 13 years ago, if I'm measuring it correctly. I was only 50 then.
He's bragging.
No, it's just, I was sitting in, one of the courtyards of the Louvre, by, Ian Pei's pyramids with the fountains going. And that was the first and only time I've been to Paris. And I realized, I turned 50 a few months before that. And I said, what took you so long? I mean, I literally said that because it was like wonderful. But it's like, what took you so long?
Yeah. All right. Got to get a pillow.
I think it's too nice for the French. That's my thinking.
Okay. Well, the story with this particular chateau, which spans the river, one side of the river was in Nazi-occupied France, and the other part was, freer. And so folks would, want to either get invited to dinner or to parties and kind of basically sneak out the back.
So it was the Berlin Wall of its time.
Yeah. So we do have a quorum. I'm here, Chris is here, James is here, Rosie's here, Omar's here, Vivian's here. So we don't have Steve. We don't have Domingo, but Domingo has not attended a land use meeting in a while. I wonder if he is still on. And Juan Guzman is new, but I think he was new as of last month and didn't attend that either. So I will have to check with them to see what's up, but we do have a quorum.
I believe Domingo he's the chair of the business committee, but I don't think he's only a part of that committee, if I'm mistaken.
Right, but I mean, Domingo was put on land use I think in January. He attended the January meeting. I believe he attended the February meeting, and then nothing since.
Okay, so I can reach out to him if you want.
Okay. And did I just see Dr. Hernandez? You're muted.
Hola.
So I put you or your topic at the very end of the agenda before old business, because you said you had another meeting that wasn't going to free you up until after 7:30.
Yes,
But-
I managed. Yes, it's okay.
Yeah. But I can move you up. We can talk about our budget issues after you, so I can shift you up later. Okay?
I am at your disposal, whatever you decide.
Okay. So I mean, let's begin. It's
Chris, you're taking minutes, right?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So it's 7:08 p.m. and I would like to welcome everyone to the October 7th meeting of the Land Use Committee. I'm Wayne Benjamin. I chair Land Use for Manhattan Community Board 12. And I would like to have my fellow committee members introduce themselves, and I will just do it based upon who I see on my screen. Starting at the upper left is Vivian.
Vivian Ducat?
Jim,
I'm Jim Berlin.
Chris,
Chris Ventura.
Omar,
Omar Tejada.
and down at the bottom I see Rosie.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rosie.
So thank you all. We did not, for the committee's benefit, we did not get around to circulating the September minutes for your review and comment. So we'll take care of that. We'll catch up on that today and make sure that for the general meeting, they have both the September and the October minutes. And of course, my phone is ringing now that I started. We have a couple of items on the agenda. I learned after the last land use meeting that the Fort Washington branch of the New York Public Library was added to the National Register of Historic Places. So
Wow.
we're going to have, Simeon Bangkok from the Historic District Council just give us a little backup on that. And actually, I got an email within the last hour or so from Natalie where Holy Root is also, up to be, actually it is on the state register and it's being forwarded to the national register. So the Land Use Committee and CB12 has always been, quite supportive of historic designation. And I see Natalie has raised her hand. I don't know, does that mean she wants to be? Paola, could you maybe make Natalie a panelist as well?
Yes, I'm gonna switch her over.
Okay, thank you. So, we can talk about that a bit. We're going to have an update on the discussion of the 857 Riverside project that we discussed last month. And there's been conversations with the borough president's office and with, Councilman Levine's office on that. We are getting an update on, the proposed Kisquiana Heights Historic District, and I probably mispronounced that because I have a cold. Dr. Ramona Hernandez of the CUNY's Dominican Studies Institute, and her team will be joining us to discuss that. Ramona and I happen to be graduates of the same city college, a few years apart. And then for, the expense and capital budget priorities, this exercise we go through every year. And I think, Paola, I think there's Peter Green, who is on the line as probably an attendee. If you could perhaps
We'll switch him over too.
move up, because when we talk about the 857, he may want to be able to interact directly. So first, I'd like to, welcome, or maybe welcome back, because I think HDC has been with us before on a few occasions, Simeon Bangkok from the Historic Districts Council to speak with us about the Fort Washington branch New York Public Library register with the listing with the Register of Historic Places.
Thank you so much, Wayne. Yes, we have been, but it's been a number of years, and I apologize. But one of the only good things about this ridiculous sort of situation we find ourselves in is that this way I can actually come to community board meetings and then commute downstairs to my kitchens to make dinner rather than having to get on an 8 train or something like that at 11 o'clock at night. So the historic, for those of you who don't know, the Historic Districts Council is the citywide advocate for New York's historic neighborhoods. We have been around for 50 years. We are a not-for-profit independent organization that works with over 500 neighborhood-based groups throughout New York City to enhance, protect, and celebrate the physical characters of their historic areas and buildings. We do this through advocacy, community outreach, and education. We have worked in your community a bit with Vivian and with Wayne as part of the Audubon Terrace Historic District.
Audubon Park.
Audubon Park, forgive me, Audubon Park expansion efforts and celebration of that. And also Inwood, of course, was actually our first, one of our first classes of the 6 to Celebrate. We have an annual program of working with 6 neighborhoods or community campaigns that are, we work very closely with them for a year and then continue to work on those issues. In order to highlight them, we do a nice guidebook for it, and Inwood was actually one of the first classes of that back in 2011. A later class of that was actually picking up an internally generated program of the Historic Districts Council, which was the celebration of the Carnegie Libraries of New York. Like I said, HDC has been around for 50 years, and starting about 18 years ago, people started getting very, very nervous about our libraries. At least they started expressing it to me. I've only been with the organization for 22 years, so they may have felt about this longer, 23. So, and we said, wow, the Carnegie Libraries are one of a class of wonderful architectural, historic buildings that sort of exist in their own group. Other kind of classes similar to that would be the CBJ Snyder schools, and then you get into Roman Catholic, then you get into churches and stuff like that. But really, the libraries, especially because of the way they were generated through the Carnegie grants, can kind of be looked at as a class unto themselves, and you can compare apples to apples with regard to the original Carnegie libraries. And I should have this number right on top of my head. Actually, I've got this popped up somewhere. There are 46 existing Carnegie Grant libraries in New York City. Yeah. Nope. Sorry, I knew I was wrong. 67 Carnegie Grant libraries in New York City, which is considering that Andrew Carnegie gave money for libraries throughout America, a remarkable collection. So we start doing these Carnegie libraries with the eventual goal of getting them placed on the National Register of Historic Places. The reason we were going for an NR status was because libraries use public money. And if we can get something on the National Register, the whole purpose of the National Register is to make certain that public funds, when they're being used to alter historic buildings, are used in the best possible way and in the most sympathetic way. Being that the libraries, by and large, the library systems, the 3 of them, by and large, like their buildings, all they would need was sort of gentle guidance to make certain that they do the right thing. Well, the best laid plans, right? Sounds like a terrific idea and really easy. You're just trying to list 67 buildings on the National Register. Fast forward 20 years. We've gone through 2 official consultants. We raised a bit of money, not a lot, a couple of $1,000s for this. Gone through 2 official consultants, a 6-pack of interns, and kind of endless, I'm a lot more gray than I was when I started this whole thing. And we finally get down also, we've gone through like 4 governors at this point because we started in like 2003. It's now 2019.
Funny.
Well, this was last year when we finished it up, right? So we finally get what's called a multiple property resource nomination, which was the idea was that we get a kind of armature for the Carnegie Libraries as a class of buildings on the National Register. Then, as people wish, they can put their own branches on it using the context statement that we have created. So we got this. It's a thing. It's taken such a long time. And then the State Historic Preservation Fund turns around to us, State Historic Preservation Office, forgive me. And they are the people up in Albany who, you know, are the keepers to the National Register for New York State. They say, well, we need a test case. We say, what? Like, we've done all this work. You said that this is fine. They said, yeah, well, I mean, in the last couple of years, the way we're doing multiple property resources has changed a little bit. And we really want to see sort of proof of concept. So we're going to request you to do a National Register nomination for a branch library that works in conjunction with this multiple property resource document. Well, the final consultant who we're working with feels terribly guilty because he's taken 3 years to do what should have been a 9-month job. So he throws it in. We sort of look on a map and say, you know, honestly, Upper Manhattan is under designated on every level. And we thought that anything that we can do, any kind of historic property that we could bring to Upper Manhattan is a good thing. So he looks through his files and says, how about the Fort Washington branch? It's a beautiful branch. I've got all the information in front of me. I say, Chris, his name is Chris. I don't just call him Chris randomly. Chris, go for it. He does it. Pandemic hits. We get delayed another, actually, so we get delayed another like 7 months. But finally in June, when we had anticipated this was going to happen in September of last year, that rolls around. We'd kind of forgotten about it. Goes before the state board, and that is how the Fort Washington branch ended up on the National Register as kind of a byproduct of the broader issue of all of the Carnegie Libraries. And I do
So HDC
apologize.
is the sponsor of that listing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I deeply apologize. No offense was meant towards this or towards the community board or the community. It just was one of these things of like, oh my God, we're finally getting this done. This has been looming over me since I was a young man of 32. So let's, you know, kind of move forward with it. So that is the story. Hold on, if can I share screen? Oh wow, I can share screen. Okay. Let me just get up. You all know the library, but let me pop you open.
I think I was there when it reopened after renovation.
Sorry?
I think I was there when it reopened after renovation.
Oh, cool. All right, so share screen, and we're going for. Okay, so this is where the library is.
I don't think this one has been renovated. Was it renovated?
The interior, yes.
I think it's been brushed up. Here is, you know, 179th Street, right over there. Let me shrink this down a little bit for you.
Now the important news. That's the library I used as a kid.
That people feel so very strongly about libraries for exactly that reason.
I
That's
think
the
it's also
library I
very
used as a
badly.
kid.
Yep.
Yes, I was a preschooler, not allowed to attend school because New York State has that ridiculous, you have to be 5 years old to enroll in school. So I spent
Oh.
2 years
Well,
in this library instead, waiting to reach that magical threshold.
But you're there now, aren't you?
Yes, you're there now.
Here's the interior. These are reasonably recent pictures.
Yeah.
The interior is basically unchanged, slightly updated, but still has its original configuration, which is very important to the National Register.
Beautiful. Oh my God.
Here's just a little detail
Wow.
from the children's corner. And that's it. You know, one interesting thing about this library is it was it was designed by, I want to get the name right, Cook and Welch, who did a number of libraries, but Cook was designed Carnegie's Mansion, the Carnegie Mansion on East 91st Street.
What's now the Cooper Hewitt?
Yep. So it was one of the last Carnegie libraries. It was built in 1914. It was one of the last Carnegie libraries in New York City to be built, maybe the last, definitely the last in Manhattan. It was the northernmost branch. At the time, the way the Carnegie system, the Carnegie grants worked was the city had to put up the money for acquisition of the land, and then the Carnegie Foundation would pay for the actual building of the building. But the library systems chose the land, and then City Hall got veto power in order to make sure that there was not political patronage going on. And remarkably, for the early 20th century in New York City, because most of the libraries were built between 1898 and 1914, there was remarkably little corruption in the Carnegie Library building out. It was actually a sort of a model system. This was also reasonably rare in that it did not replace any existing library. A lot of the libraries which came about were sort of, there had been libraries in the area before, and then that sort of served as the basis for their collections. This was not one of those. So that's I mean, if anyone's interested, I know Wayne's got, and I'm more than happy to share also, it's a public document, the National Register form for the library. And if you really want to read,
I shared that report with the Land Use Committee.
oh, fantastic. And I can also share with Wayne, he can pass it along, the 42-page history of the whole Carnegie system.
Great.
Yeah.
Wayne, when did you sent that to us today?
No, I sent it to you a week or more ago.
Oh, all right. Let me look for it. I missed it.
Simeon, Pat Courtney wants me to tell you that the libraries as a whole were 6 to celebrate, and that you should say that.
I did, but that's sweet of Pat. Yes, they indeed were one of the 6 to celebrate. One of our programs. Search me if I remember the year. I want to say it was 2013.
Is
we have a guidebook and stuff. Yes.
Also involved with the National Register listing for Holy Rood Church?
No.
Okay, so we have to find out who's advancing that.
I betcha that might be my colleagues at the New York Landmarks Conservancy.
Okay, and we know them as well. So they too should not be afraid to speak to CB12 because we don't fight.
They regularly go around and they try to get National Register listings for particularly churches, so that opens up additional ways of funding for their Sacred Sites program.
Yeah, maybe I'll just invite them to come and have a getting to know you meeting with land use.
Yeah.
And it's a very beautiful
their
little
Sacred Sites
church.
person knows every religious property in the 5 boroughs and beyond. She's fantastic.
Right. Any further questions, comments on this topic?
Yeah, did we thank him for doing the work to get this on the National Register?
Simeon, I think we're thanking you for doing the work to get this on the National Register. And I just want you and everyone else to know that both the Land Use Committee and the board as a whole has been very supportive of historic designation and have actually passed a couple of resolutions to that effect.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. It's really, we depend on articulate, informed advocates like this board. I wish all boards were like this.
Yeah. Dr. Hernandez, were you raising your hand on this matter?
Right, I just, I mean, it's beautiful. I mean, the library is, deserves all kinds of recognition and acknowledgement and placement. It's beautiful. And then the stories behind the library. Do you think that it was going to be very difficult or at all getting it on the National Register, Seymour?
I really didn't. When we embarked on this, we really thought this was going to be maybe a 3-year project, not a 13-year project. And what can I say? People would, some people ended up starting families, and that knocked them out for 9 months or a year, and then it's just one of these things that's just been lingering around. It was through no fault and no onus. It was all positive reasons that it took a long time, but it was frustrating. Slightly frustrating.
There typically is a plaque placed on a building when it's on the National Register. Has that been placed yet? And if not, where's it going to be located?
I know nothing about that. It would be up to the library entirely if they want to do that.
Yeah, I've seen them on the facade of building, maybe near the entrance. It says it's National Register, and it gives a blurb, why it's on the National Register.
Yeah, I don't know who. At one point, the New York Community Trust ran that project. I don't know if anybody's actively doing that these days. There's lots and lots of properties that are on the National Register that don't have that.
Okay.
And typically, National Register properties, unless they, it'll just say National Register of Historic Places and like a little seal. It's not like a big explanatory thing. It's up to the library, really. I mean, because again, the thing about the National Register, as the committee might know, it puts no onus on property owners except in dealing with governmental and public monies.
Right. Peter, did you have your hand up for this topic?
Yeah, just to ask Simeon to please stick around for the 857 discussion, that's all.
I will try.
I think Simeon is familiar with the 857.
Yes.
Yep, just a little.
Jim?
I just wanted to comment that the Holy Rood Church is a really very beautiful little church. And they redid a lot of the exterior a while ago, so it is now even more magnificent. And of course, it has programs, and it's been one of the churches in the neighborhood that has, had people take sanctuary there.
Mm-hmm. Vivian, are you raising your hand?
Yes. So Simeon, now that the test case has gone through, does the rest of the package go through together, or you still have to go one by one?
What it is this really creates an armature so that it's much easier to do National Register. You can get libraries on the National Register. They still have to go one by one, but you can just say, as seen in the context of this, of the broader issue. Rather, in context of the broader document, it fulfills this, and this, and this. So it's much simpler to do.
Great. If there isn't anything further on this, I want to once again.
Simeon?
Mm-hmm.
Steve, we can only see your nose down.
Oh, God. Simeon, I'd like to see this written up in our local newspaper. Is there a chance you'd be interested? You would reach out to the Manhattan Times and let them know that this has happened, and see if you can interest them in doing a story about it?
If you tell me who to talk to, I'm happy to try to do that.
Yeah, Deborah Lee Santos is the name of the editor.
Yeah, well, maybe Deborah Lee can also reach out to the community board for comment.
She's fantastic. She is
that would also be
fantastic. She is fantastic.
Yeah, great.
All right. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me. I will hang around for a little while, but I am also interested in seeing the debate.
Okay. Well, yes.
That's at 9.
Yeah, typically land use is finished by 8:30, although last time we went until like 9:08 or something like that. So the next item on the agenda is in fact an update on 857. And in addition to Tim Anderson from the Borough President's Office, we have Manuel Bellard or Belliard, how do you pronounce that?
Belliard.
Okay.
Belliard.
And have you also been in the loop on the discussions with Mark's office on this? On 857?
Yes. I just spoke to Eric about this earlier today, Eric Cuello.
Yes, Eric and I spoke. So, Tim, I'd asked Tim Anderson, who, as you know from the September meeting, is the planning rep with the Borough President's Office who works with CB12. I forwarded, I summarized like a half a dozen questions that came out of the September meeting to the Borough President and to Mark and to Senator Jackson and to everyone else to get them involved in this. Tim has responded a couple times, and I wanted him to give us an update. And I spoke with Eric Cuello from Mark Levine's office, and we shared some emails back and forth. So we have both the Borough President's office and our councilman's office here to give us an update on what they've learned and where things stand. So Tim, I'll start with you. The floor, or rather the screen, is yours.
Thank you so much. So updates on this from our office. I think, Wayne, as you know, with the questions that you sent to us, central to what happens with 857 really depends on this wide street designation. And it has been a little difficult to get a response out of DOB and DCP to an extent of what exactly the dimensions of the street are, because as we've discussed and with the photos that you shared with me earlier this week, there's obviously the change in the topography at that location. There is that green space. And I think, once we can really get an answer for this on the wide street, it'll really kind of, I would say would limit, any potential development. And it would obviously, if the street is not wide, it would definitely come under the sliver law, as I think you also raised. I spoke with Ophelia from DOB a little earlier this week. Still waiting for her to get back to me on the sliver law question, because obviously, like it's a matter of the wide street, and I know I was recently in touch with Peter and George Janes. I think we have a meeting that we're trying to, get in the works to try and figure out what the Borough President's Office role would be in the discussion on the city map. I think I'll definitely bring this up with Gail next week to let her know that, we may have a larger role to play in the decision-making process into which map gets used by DCP or in this case, DOB. And yeah, we also signed on to, we've also, been working with Eric at CM Levine's office on a letter to the developer. So, our office is happy to sign on to that. I think the only other update I have is I promised to let you know if Gail's had a chance to speak with the DOB commissioner. She has not, and I'm still going to, keep pushing to make sure that meeting happens, so we can really get an answer, because I know this is a huge concern for you all.
Manuel, anything?
Just two things to add. Yeah, I had gotten confirmation from Eric that the Manhattan Borough President's Office actually did sign on to our letter to DOB about 857. We're waiting on one more elected to sign on, and you guys should have it before the end of the week.
So the councilman's office is sending a letter to DOB.
Yes, sir.
And the gist of that letter is what?
From what I gathered, the contents of the letter were something along the lines to have Mr. John Rain come to a meeting with CB12, our office, and the Borough President's Office to speak about the situation at 857.
Who's John Rain?
He's the Manhattan Borough Director for DOB.
And I think it was, I got Tim in touch with Steve Simon, not wearing his land use CB12 hat, but wearing his parks hat. Because
Which he wears anyway.
what DOB is saying in its, determination of the street width, it's counting basically from, street wall to street wall. So the lower drive, which is actually a two-way street that was actually built before the upper drive, based on Matthew Spade's research. Then there's the upper drive, but between the two is, part of a city park. And last month, someone pointed out they thought that was part of Riverside Park, but Steve pointed out actually it's part of Fort Washington Park. But the DOB is comparing it to like the planted malls on Broadway or Park Avenue, which to my knowledge, those malls are part of the street, although city parks may have responsibility for maintaining them. It's not the same as saying you're going to take the parkland and say it's part of the street and measure that. So I don't know, Tim or Steve, did they touch base with parks on that at all?
Yeah, Tim sent me an email, and last night I sent him back one suggesting that he contact our chief of parklands. I don't know whether
I haven't had. Yes, I got your. I have the contact. Thank you so much for calling. I'll definitely I'm going to reach out to her.
I would figure she should be our expert on this kind of question. And if she isn't, she would at least have somebody maybe in her shop who can answer the question. But this is, beyond my comprehension.
Right, but I thought you would be a good person for them to speak to, and you could point them in the right direction, and you have.
Yeah, which is what I did. Yeah, but but also Wayne, I think you're accurate that the Broadway malls are actually technically DOT property, which we maintain. They are part of a street. They are in the middle of between northbound and southbound traffic. So I agree with you that this is not an analogous situation. The parkland between 158 and 165th Street is officially New York City parkland, and it is not between north and southbound lanes. So it is, I think it's distinctly different from the Broadway. If what you were told is that this is comparable to Broadway, I think there's clearly an argument that it is not.
I believe that's what the borough president's office was told.
Yeah, well, I think we have an argument to the contrary.
Oh, I totally agree. I totally agree with Steve's analysis. This is not like the Broadway malls at all. These are two separate streets. Even if they have the same name, but they're and then there's a park between, and it's not a mall. It's a,
Well, the upper drive, I think, is the equivalent of a service road. It's not, it's not part of the Riverside Drive segment. I think it's even on some maps. I think it's referred to as just a service road.
Actually, what is now the upper Riverside Drive is the remnant of Rue Lafayette or Lafayette Boulevard. Because remember, Edward Morgan Place, that used to be Rue Lafayette, and that continued up. So when Riverside Drive was extended north, it took that circuitous route on what we call the lower drive. That upper portion, and Matthew Spady just published a month ago, so the book, The Neighborhood That Manhattan Forgot, or New York City Forgot, and we did for Historic Districts Council a sort of a video discussion that I moderated for him. And so he's done a lot of research on the area going back to when this was John Audubon's estate and before. And he pointed out to me after the September meeting, based on his research, the upper drive was built later. So, I mean, they weren't even built at the same time to be the same road. Yeah. Peter?
Yeah, and I just point out, last weekend, one of my neighbors actually organized a cleanup of the park with enormous support from the Department of Parks. Thank you, Steve, including a woman whose name slips my mind, who's the Assistant Commissioner for Upper Manhattan.
She's the Northern Manhattan Parks Administrator, Jennifer Hopper.
Exactly. She and the a fellow named Malcolm, his name slips my mind, who's responsible for all the playgrounds and things up there, have for years been very clear that this is this is a city park, this land, and calls years ago to DOT to get them to do something about even just cleaning the street at the bottom where there's no sidewalk. We call parks. It's not ours. But you know, I'm DOB seems to think, I guess, based on this, that Central Park is just a grassy median between 8th Avenue and 5th Avenue, which just seems kind of ridiculous to me. But yeah, the whole issue of the width is absolutely vital here in terms of 857. And I think what Tim alluded to about the fact that the Borough President's Office determines the maps is something I'm hoping, we were hoping to meet this week, but I guess it's not going to happen, but we'll meet next week to discuss this more precisely. But it's really a BP's power, apparently, to determine which maps DOB can use. I'm not clear why DOB is so enthusiastic about ignoring any community interest in this site, but you know, DOB is DOB.
Well, let's put it this way. When I was speaking to Tim about this, one of the problems, and we've discussed this for years, one of the problems with some of the, with maps in general is they're flat. It's, they think of things in 2 dimension. And going back to when Edwin Marshall used to be our contact for city planning, you know, the zoning maps, you know, look at the sites as if they're flat. When we come up to Washington Heights and Inwood, we have heights, and some of the sites are anything but flat. And speaking to Tim, he said he was not that familiar with the area, which is why he sent him a bunch of photographs to show that starting at 158th Street, the upper and lower drives, you know, take their paths on different elevations. And as you proceed northward, you can see from, you know, the lower drive, the height of that retaining wall. I mean, there was a DHL truck parked there, which was good because you could see the scale of where the street was, the upper drive, compared to the lower drive. And then when you're on the upper drive, you've got the top of the retaining wall, which people use basically as a bench. But then you're looking into maybe the 2nd or 3rd floor windows of the buildings across the street. So, you know, the map, if DOB is just looking at it flat, might say, oh, well, this just looks like it's a median. If you were looking at topography, you would see that it's not flat, but a picture's worth 1,000 words, which is why, you know, I shared those pictures. And, you know, it's, you
There's
know,
a whole
I'm
staircase
hoping
there.
that we can get Gail to come and just meet us at the house in a week or 2 and just see this with her own eyes and make her a much more.
I think Gail knows the area.
Right, but you know, to stand there, see the house, talk to the fellow who lives in it now, see the exact slope and everything along with others, could really, you know, help.
Well, I mean,
people
I
become more
would leave that to the folks who are coordinating, you know, with the Borough President's Office, you know, to see what her, you know, what her calendar is
Yes,
like.
that's what we're working.
If I may, just a number of years ago, several years ago, there was a situation in Carroll Gardens in Brooklyn. And this was the area in Carroll Gardens where they've got very, very deeply set back row houses. But the streets had been designated as wide streets, even though they were 2-lane standard streets, because the row houses were so deeply set back that DOB regarded them as wide. And Mayor de Blasio, when he was still council member de Blasio, as I recall, so this was some time ago, and because this was like the only thing he ever did to help out development concerns in Carroll Gardens, he somehow, through his councilmanic powers, just managed to get DOB to accept that these are narrow streets, so that you know, maybe he interceded through the Brooklyn Borough President's Office as a councilman. But I mean, that's that. If you know, if you've got Gail, who is generally sympathetic to the communities, and your councilman on your side, that might be a way of doing it.
Right. But it sounds like what he convinced them to do is to look at where the property line begins as opposed to where the building line is.
Exactly.
But I mean, so Manny, that's something that perhaps Mark can look into. But I mean, that's not even the case here because it's pretty well built up. What we need to get them to look at is, from the face of the building to where the street ends, and the street ends at, where the park begins, but that park with no sidewalk, as Peter pointed out. I mean, if it were a street, the medians they don't have sidewalks, they have curbs and things like that. There's no curb. I mean, it's dirt. It comes downhill and it ends in dirt. So it may be between the borough president's office and the councilman's office. I could look at that. I would also point out that Al Taylor, although he is a state elected official, said that, he is supportive and whatever we need him to do, he'll do. Peter?
Yeah, so I want just to give you all a very brief update on the house overall. I think you guys have covered the land use and zoning issue pretty clearly. And there is one last big zoning ZOLA issue, which is what exactly the 40-foot width is referring to in the Sliver Act. And there are some people who say it refers to the street wall, and others that it refers to any horizontal line on the lot. And then others who say, no, it's meant to be the actual width of the lot, because the lot has a 53-foot street wall, but it's only 35 feet wide, or less than that actually, and it's 35 feet wide at a diagonal on the rear. So that may also be something that really needs to be resolved as well, because when I spoke with Ryan Cody after the last meeting, he said, yeah, somebody could take a lot that's 10 feet deep with a 100-foot street wall and theoretically put up a sliver tower if they could find the steel that would make it possible. So that's also out there, but hopefully we won't have to go down that road, because we have done some historic research and we've discovered some really interesting links to abolitionists, very prominent uptown abolitionists, and possibly to the Underground Railroad. We're trying to nail down a little more about that. And that might make a very interesting case to the Landmarks Commission. Simeon's been giving us some tips on how to make a stronger case. And so we're working on that right now. And then as sort of an aside, which has nothing to do with land use or zoning, but the very sad story of the guy who owned the house and had to sell it, and that he got caught up in the Countrywide Mortgage easy money stuff in the early 2000s, borrowed way too much money that he was never able to pay back. And then this developer came to him in one of these scams that they warn you about and said, oh, I'll buy it at auction for a pittance, and then you will lease it back from me until I'm paid off, and then you'll keep the house and the bank will swallow all the money you lost. Of course, the guy had no intention of selling it back to Al Wright, the man who lives there. And Al has been squatting there since he sold the house at the end of last year, but he's been told that by October 15th, that's 8 days from now, he has to be out or the developer is going to come in with sledgehammers. So we are working right now with Wendy Olivo from Al Taylor's office and an attorney to try to make sure that nothing illegal happens, because evictions are stopped right now. We want to make sure that we can buy ourselves some time to see where we go with it. So I just wanted to share that update with everybody.
I'd say thanks for that. LPC, and I've pointed this out on a couple of occasions, has not really been a receptive partner, at least uptown, to either expanding the Audubon Park district or designating adjacent contiguous districts. And, you know, the upper and lower drives back in 2008 or so, when Audubon Park was being discussed, we suggested a much broader area to include the upper and lower drives. And when it wasn't included, the community board, you know, they supported the designation of Audubon Park as it's currently defined, with about, you know, a dozen or so buildings. But we also said in the same resolution that we urged LPC to move forward expeditiously with additional designation. They haven't done that. And, you know, while the possible connection to the Underground Railroad is interesting, I think that Matthew Spady has pointed out that when we're looking at the 158th Street row houses, there used to be a sugar refinery, I believe,
This is connected.
at the end of the street, which was possibly also connected to the Underground Railroad. And weren't there, Simeon, some warehouses in Brooklyn that were connected? Or I think it was documented that they were connected to the Underground Railroad, and LPC just didn't seem to be interested.
But it was another time, no?
No, it was in the last couple of years.
You know, I think those were, I don't know if those were warehouses. Isn't that, weren't those the buildings on Duffield Street?
Yeah, those were row houses on Duffield Street,
Yeah.
which actually Landmarks has just, out of this, very surprising reversal, has actually had a hearing. It was a very good hearing, and will probably move to be designating the last remaining of those houses.
Okay, so they changed their mind.
Yes.
Okay.
They
And
were,
thank you for, sorry.
Chair Sarah Carroll was incredibly clear that it was a priority of the mayor.
Yeah.
So, and thank you, Wayne, for bringing up that sugar refinery. So at the bottom of 158th Street was a sugar refinery that belonged to a man named Dennis Harris. And he was an immigrant from England or Scotland who had owned a sugar refinery in downtown Manhattan that he had used to help escaped slaves hide and get on a steamship that he ran up to Poughkeepsie, where they would then move on to Canada. When that exploded and burned down, which seems to have happened a lot to sugar refineries, he built a new one at 158th Street. And we're trying to get more documentation, but there is some that was used to shelter runaway slaves. Another interesting piece of it is that this same Dennis Harris built a church at the corner of 155th in Amsterdam, I think, where that housing, it's not public housing, but
It's elder housing, no?
No,
no, that's 157th. This is the one at 155th, next to the old Welsh church.
Dunwell Plaza.
Yeah, which is a CBO housing thing. Anyway, he had built a schismatic Methodist church there, the Wesleyan group, because he'd been kicked out of his lower Manhattan Methodist church for being an abolitionist. And so there was a very strong tie to abolitionism and activism. And we want to be absolutely sure before we go completely public with the term Underground Railroad, but that's what was going on here. And there's very little notice of that in Uptown Manhattan at all. And so it would be wonderful to preserve a real physical touchstone, and kind of ties in with what Wayne led off with at last month's meeting about, iniquities, inequities, and ignoring history of the African-American population in New York.
Yeah, but what was this building part of the sugar refinery?
It was built as we're trying to find out exactly whether it was the home or an additional house built by the fellow who built the refinery. So we're digging a little deeper, but it was certainly owned by him.
What year was this? The refinery? What year?
We're taking the 1840s, 1850s. I think 1851 is when we think the house was built, and the refinery a year or two earlier.
But I mean, for 857 Riverside Drive, I read somewhere that was an Audubon guest house.
Well, that's what we thought it was at first, and apparently that was not quite right. It was adjacent to the Audubon estate. It was not the main Audubon house. One of the main Audubon houses was on the site of what's now River Arts.
No, not their house. It was referred to as one of their guest houses,
Right.
not one of the main houses.
Right, but we thought that it was, but it looks like that was a misnomer, but it was part of the Audubon Park.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole sort of, already in the 1850s, real estate development history of people seizing on famous names to boost the values of what they're building on spec and selling.
Yeah, actually, in his book, and we might want to ask, Matthew had or has a map of the houses that were built on the Audubon estate, and I believe this area was literally like across the street from the Audubon estate, and it had some houses there. But you're right, the people who live there refer to it as Audubon Park as well.
Yeah,
Like you don't live in Brooklyn Heights, you live across the street, but you say, well, it's really Brooklyn Heights.
exactly. South Slope.
I tell Peter, I'm really troubled by what you said earlier about the guy who bought the house is threatening to go in there on the 15th with a sledgehammer and evict the guy who's living there now. Does he have a lawyer? Have they put this guy on notice that if he tries to go in there and illegally evict him, he's committing a criminal act? Has somebody told him that?
That's tomorrow. Wendy Olivo and I are going to meet with Al Wright, the guy who lives in the house, and try to get some of these facts down on paper.
But
and then the next thing would be to have an attorney call this guy and point out to him that, you know, anything he wants to do actually has to go through the court, or, you know, he'll end up back in jail.
Right. No, he's got to have a lawyer. We got to get him a lawyer. This is crazy.
Yes. So the problem is I tried Housing Legal Aid, that a friend of mine runs that, but he said it's really just for renters. And
This is the person who sold the house, right?
yeah.
So he presumably sold it, according to the record, for nearly $1 million. He can't get
No, so it was a short sale, so he had to pay the bank pretty much everything that he got for it. He sold it for $975, but as near as I can make out, that didn't go into his pocket because he had borrowed 1.1 million and possibly a lot more against it.
Right. I mean, the point is, he obviously should be represented by legal counsel.
And he never has been. And
that's the, I mean, I ran into situations like this years ago when I worked at Harlem CDC, where there were folks and they were like going back and forth. And then we said, okay, you've been doing this for 8 years. Who's your attorney? We never reached out to one because this person, that person, and it's like, it doesn't make sense. I mean, yes, there are attorneys who charge $1,000 an hour. I would say he probably doesn't need one of those, but he should get an attorney.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're working on, trying to get an attorney. The issue is for foreclosures and evictions, there are different processes, and
yes,
a lot of the legal aid isn't available for homeowners.
Okay, but maybe the assembly member's office can has somebody who would do this for them as a favor.
Well, that's what we're trying to figure out, who we can get.
Well, I mean, you have the assemblyman's rep on the line, so you can offline or maybe in the chat function, you know, go back.
There?
Not the, I mean, the councilman, Manuel.
Yeah, right. Yeah, maybe Mark knows someone who could help out in this situation.
Right. So my point is, even on this, you can go into a private chat, email back and forth. Right.
Yeah, Peter, I'll drop my number in the Q&A, or we can.
Yeah, why don't we try to chat tomorrow morning, Manuel? That work?
Sure, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah, I have your email, so I can get you that way too.
I just want to say one more time, if this guy actually said he was going to go into that building with a sledgehammer to evict the current occupant, somebody has got to put him on notice that is a criminal act. And
I'm sure he knows it's a criminal act.
Well, somebody's got to make sure that he knows he cannot get away with doing something like that.
Right. The problem is separating fact from fiction with Mr. Wright, to be blunt about it. Okay. Yeah. He made a major screw up, and I don't think he really wants to acknowledge all of it. I'm being, you know, more candid than I should be, but that's kind of at the root of it. It's like, sit down with the guy, see what he's got, write down the story a second time, see how that compares to the first time, and then see where we can go with that and compare it to the official record.
Okay, I tell you, whether or not he has a lawyer, the assembly member or the council member, somebody can contact the owner and tell him if he actually made that threat that he should be on notice, that if he tries to do anything like that, he could be put in jail.
Yeah, well, I would say, I mean, we had a similar conversation, not a similar, we had a conversation at last month's general meeting where, you know, when an issue is raised that we don't have, you know, firsthand knowledge of, the first thing we really need to do is find out what was actually said. So the owner, you know, if he's, you know, speaking to one of his elected officials or to his council, you know, can say, this is what the person told me on what date. Everyone on you know, this Zoom meeting, you know, we're hearing about it, but we can't say what was actually said.
Right. So that's what I want. That's what Wendy's going to come with me tomorrow. We're going to sit down with the guy and see what's real and how it compare, what he has, what he says, and how it compares to what records are available. And in any event, you're absolutely right. Step one is to get an attorney who will fire off a letter to this Petrikowski who bought the place and Freund, his partner, and say, you know, we want to make you aware, evictions are halted until December 31st. Evictions of seniors can't happen during the winter. And, you know, any attempt to raise a hammer to anything in this house before then will, you know, land you in legal trouble. And
Yeah, well, I mean, but beyond that, I mean, you can't do the demolition legally without the DOB permit as well, so.
right. But yeah, but you can do interior damage to the house.
Well, yeah, but I don't know what the interior of the house is like,
Yeah.
but I mean, the point is, yeah, all of the facts that are related to the situation need to be laid out, but you can't do it.
That's what we're going to do first, and then
Okay.
we're going to take it from there.
So, do we have any further updates, questions or comments on 857? If not, I thank you know, you, Peter, for joining us again.
Thank you.
And Tim for joining us again, and Manny for joining us, at least via Zoom for the first time. You know, please stick around. The next item on the agenda, I'm going to reverse the order. So what is number 5 on the agenda is going to be number 4. Some of the committee members may remember that I think sometime last year we started speaking with Lori from Congressman rather, Espaillat's office, about 2 initiatives in Inwood, one of which was a Inwood apartment house district. And there's been some discussion of that district going back to when I first joined the community board, as well as a non-contiguous historic district that is, you know, related to sort of the history and culture of the Dominican immigrants in the area. And we were, I see Laura Tobias has joined us. We were curious about the non-contiguous. I mean, that can be done, but we wanted some examples where that was done. And I reached out to just get an update from Lori on what's happening there. She introduced me to Dr. Hernandez, who is, you know, with CUNY's Dominican Studies Institute, and they're working on the research for this and will give us an update. But I think first you have some of your team members with us, and I'd love if you would introduce yourself and introduce them as well. So the floor is yours, Dr. Hernandez.
Thank you. It's quite an honor to speak to you about this issue, and thank you, Wayne, for inviting me. And I graduated from Lehman, not right, the less prestigious, right?
No, back in my day, which is a few years ago, each of the colleges of the senior had the major they were known for. And so City was known for engineering. Queens was known for, you know, sort of liberal arts. Lehman, I think, was tied to teaching. And Hunter was social work. So it's not the least bit less prestigious. It had a different major.
Right, except that City College is the Harvard, right?
Well, it's the first. It's the first.
Right, it's the Harvard of the poor, and then you come from the Spitzer architecture school, which is, you know, it's in a league of its own.
Yeah, when I was there, it wasn't the Spitzer school, but, you know, that's a more recent development.
Gracias, Lori, for keeping up this project and giving us a hand as well. I want to see whether I still had the members of my team with me. Professor Ortiz, I know he was teaching, and I think he was going to be until 7:30. Paul, are you with us? Okay, Waldemar, are you with us? Matthew, Jensen?
Hello, Dr. Hernandez, I'm here. Good evening, everyone.
I see Waldemar.
Yes, good evening, everyone.
Great. Matthew, are you on?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Oh, thank you. Without, then I will not be able to do much. The the first thing is we are looking for advice, we are looking for counsel, we are looking for better ways to improve what we are doing. And what we are doing is to try to create a historic memory of the Dominican people in a place where they have resided persistently and consistently for over 100 years. As I was listening to Simard and the others, and thinking about the National Register, what we found is that the majority of the things that are registered there happen to be a physical structure, happen to be things like Simard was talking about, either a group of buildings because of their historical legacy, or perhaps a particular property that have to do with also a historical legacy. In the case of what we are trying to do, it's very different. Here we are trying to register, keep the memory of a people. So we are appealing to what we call cultural historical legacy, and have a historic district declare name after the Dominican people. This is in terms of the largest scope here. We are in the process of putting the application together, and there is a team of people working with me, all of them amateur, including the professors. We're not architects, we're not engineers. I am a sociologist, and then I have librarian and young researchers doing this thing. And what I wanted to do is to, because you might ask, why are they trying to do this? And if I can share the screen briefly, I'm gonna give you it's sort of like show to you the significance of the Dominican people in the US. And here, briefly, I'm gonna do this. Let me see. I'm not good at technology. So I think that the hosts need to allow me to do this.
Yeah, I think, Paola, can you allow Dr. Hernandez to share her screen?
Thank you. Okay, let's see.
You're all set.
Let's see if I can do that. Okay, at least I have it on my own. Okay, any way to share this?
You would have to press the share screen button on the bottom of your screen.
Actually, I did that. Bueno. This is, I did that and it doesn't show up in here. Okay, let me see if I go back to you guys and I'm able to, okay. I see you here, Paola. Okay, let's see. Come on, okay. Share screen here. Okay, here and share.
Okay.
I think I got it right. Oh, again, and it left. Come on.
No, I can see it.
Okay, great. I wanted to see it. This is, I'm trying to see this.
Oh, okay.
Okay, let me see. Okay, if I can do this. All right. So this is just a, it's sort of like a graphic image of the Dominican people in the United States. And we go from 1613, which is the first recorded immigrant actually in New York City, and what is today Manhattan in New York City. And this is Juan Rodriguez. And of course, you know the whole story about him. And from there, from one Dominican that we know, we go to Ellis Island. And the reason why we stop in Ellis Island is because this is a part of a national history, the memory of Ellis Island, the millions of people who came to the United States through that port. When we think of Ellis Island, we usually think of European coming to the US through that port. It happened that a little over 5,000 Dominicans also came through Ellis Island. And this is one of the things that we are documenting in the in the Dominican Studies Institute. Some of those people who came through Ellis Island, some of those Dominicans went to live in Washington Heights, and we will show you that. And of course, the big picture, the one that you know, and this is related to what we call the massive migration of Dominicans that began in the midst of the 1960s. So this is sort of like in a very brief view what we have. It from one person, we are now a little over 2 million Dominicans, because this data goes to 2018. Want to remind you of that. This provides I think a little picture or a more clear picture of that growth of the Dominican people. It's pretty scary. It's aggressive in terms of their demographic growth. Of course, this is the United States, and this is also a slide that tells you the number of Dominicans when they came. Oh, un momento. When they came, and how long they have been living here. And if you look at this table, what you're going to see is that a little over 50% of the Dominican people in general, have been living here since 1990, right? Since 1990, over 20 years. No question, actually 30 years now. And the rest are the newest Dominicans, so over 50% of them. And if you, let me see, because I'm trying to do this and also look at your faces as well. This give you an idea of how the Dominican people are growing, and part of the growth have to do, demographic growth had to do because of very high birth rate. This is New York City, and this is the comparison of two dates, 2005 and 2018. And as you can see, these are immigrant groups. This is what is registered in this particular pie here. They are very, they happen to have, lots of children, right? And this is one of the reasons why the population is growing. And this graph show you the Dominican people in terms of those who are immigrants and those who are now born in the United States. The reason why we do this is because in many instances you hear people telling Dominicans that they are immigrants who are thinking to go back and that they don't have any root here, or the roots are very slight and in Chai. And this tells you that the Dominican population born and raised in this country, it's growing very fast. Now it's almost half, represent almost half of the Dominican people.
The other way.
The other way. And this tells you the different places, the different states where Dominicans are located. New York, of course, is the place where the majority of the Dominican people reside, and the second largest place will be New Jersey, then followed by Florida, and then you have the other. Arizona, don't pay attention to Arizona. I had to do that because Dominicans recently elected a person to office in Arizona, and the population is small, but they still managed to do that. And they wanted the Dominican Studies Institute to do numbers on them, and then I have it here. But this is the 90% of the Dominican people will be concentrated in this particular eight states. And of course, New York is the large component of that.
So you're also showing large increases in, if you go back to the prior slide,
Oh, yes.
in
The
Rhode
Dominican-
Island and Pennsylvania.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Particularly Pennsylvania, it's now growing aggressively. They are growing everywhere. And I'm going to show you, I think I have a map here. They're growing everywhere. This is a map of the United States. I don't know if you have the whole view of it, because I have part of my map.
Yeah, I guess the whole thing.
So they are everywhere in the United States, but in some places more concentrated than in other. And what is interesting that they are growing aggressively in places like Pennsylvania, right? As compared to other places, Florida, they are growing, but the grow it's less aggressive.
But based on your research, are the patterns of growth folks who are moving directly to Pennsylvania and Rhode Island, or are these folks who were in New York? New York becomes too expensive and then they move.
I love your question. I love your question. When we compare all of the states where Dominican are moving, right, internally, this is one of the newest research that we have done. We tend to lose, New York tend to lose Dominicans to places like Florida, for instance, and definitely Pennsylvania. We lose people to them. But what is interesting is that what we see is that they are settled in New York, and after living some time in New York, there's a portion of them that will move to other places. But the one that leave are replaced by two other groups, and that is a birth, right? That is pretty high, actually the highest one in the city, and then new migrants that are coming from the Dominican Republic. So that keeps the population, the Dominican population, growing in a positive way rather than in a negative way if we can follow, growing negatively. So those two factors, right? The high birth rate and then the new migrants that are coming in. So the people that we lose, and I love your question, are people that had been living in New York for a long time, or young professional. So those are the two people that we see. And Florida is one, in Pennsylvania, it's another one. And we suspect that it have to do with the high rent and that kind of thing. So, okay, sorry about that. I think we went through this one. I haven't had much time to review this. I'm sorry. I've been in presentation to meetings and meetings and meetings. I thought that I had another graph, another table showing the proportion of the Dominican people in New York, and then in the city of New York. When you think of New York, the majority of the people will be concentrated in New York City. And by that, I mean 90% of the Dominican people who lived in New York, they will live or they live in New York City. And that in New York City, then the distribution, of course, is all of the boroughs with the least number of Dominicans living in Staten Island. And we measure that by decades, we do this for everybody who need numbers from the Dominican people. So Staten Island is the borough that has the least number of Dominican people. Today, as compared to before, the Bronx is the borough that contains the largest number in terms of absolute number of Dominican people. In the case of Manhattan, this is where Dominicans have the largest Dominican population for decades and decades and decades. The Bronx is a new phenomenon. It is now. And one of the reasons why you have so many Dominicans there is because when you look at birth, where are children being born, that's one enclave where you have lots of women giving birth as compared to other borough of Dominican ancestry, right? Giving birth. So, and when you look at Manhattan, Manhattan, as you know very well, is divided by neighborhoods. The place where the Dominican people have been living for a long time in large number, it's Washington Heights. And here you have some of the numbers. I think this give you the percentage, which I think is sometimes easier as compared to other groups. Dominican have a very strong presence in this neighborhood for a long time.
Yeah. These two recent charts, I mean, they raised an interesting question of race, ethnicity, and nationality. That can be the subject of, and probably should be the subject of a completely different discussion. I mean, we had some not very productive discussions at our last general meeting, on this. And I noticed that Dr. Martha Moreno Vega and the Caribbean Cultural Center, they have a number of programs, I think starting yesterday, on, race, myth, and ethnicity. And they had an exhibit a couple of years ago that looked at it. And so there's so much when you look at people and how they self-identify and how they either come together or divide themselves on, race, ethnicity, and nationality. And, some of the thinking just doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. But it's worth an in-depth, thoughtful discussion.
Definitely.
Well, I'll have to pull the Dominican, Studies Institute into the room with the Caribbean Cultural Center and a few others, and we're going to have that conversation. How about that?
That would be fantastic. I know Dr. Moreno Vega for a long time. I mean, she's an icon and someone that from many of us have learned from. I mean, that is, she's an institution.
Yeah, she is.
Herself and pushing that center, struggling to keep it open and receive the funding that we need to keep it open and keep going. It's yes, I agree.
Could I ask a question about the previous slide?
Yes.
Could you go to the previous one? Yeah, I find this. Hello? No, you had it a moment ago. Yeah, this one. I never could understand how we, in the 2010 census, how we could have lost so many people in Washington Heights and Inwood. And this is very instructive because it shows that the Dominican population remained pretty consistent, increased slightly between 2000 and 2010. What you're showing here is that there was a drop off of maybe 25,000 other Hispanics or Latinos of any race. Do you have any idea what ethnic group or what type of Hispanics or Latinos that could have been, that we could have lost that many people from that group?
From 10 to 18, we know.
No. From 2000 to 2010, there shows a drop off of 25,000 in that group, just the one just below Dominican any race. Other Hispanic or Latino, any race. That
is a big drop.
But I couldn't believe that we could have lost that much population. What ethnic group or what group could that have been?
Well, knowing the Latino population in Washington Heights, and you know this better than I do, a group of people that was there. And that had been losing people systematically throughout the years are Cubans. They had a very
but you have Cubans above that, and you have Puerto Ricans above that. So who's?
It's not a helpful category because it's
my graph left. Just a second. Momentito.
Steve, I think that is an aggregate of those other ones, the Mexican, Cuban, Puerto Rican.
No, we have them separately.
No, we have them separate. Those other Hispanics, Latino, or any other race will be your Argentinians, your Peruvians, right? Your Ecuadorians. and I'm glad you are asking the question. If I remember my data correctly, the Colombian and Ecuadorian population had been growing and declining. So that's one of the population that I remember, as long with the Cuban, but I didn't remember. I had separated them. Yes, Ecuadorian and Colombians.
And it would have, sorry to interject, but it probably would have been very fascinating also, because if that population decreased in Washington Heights, you probably are going to see an increase out in the outer boroughs, specifically in the Bronx and in Queens, where that population is actually stretched out from this neighborhood too. So it wouldn't surprise me if you saw the demographics in the Bronx and Queens, and you'd actually see an inverse effect there with this time period, seeing an increase in the population in those areas as well.
Yeah, no, especially I always thought that following the Dominicans, the next largest Hispanic or Latino group would have been Puerto Ricans, and we've lost a lot of the Cubans over the years, but I'm surprised that we could have that many Colombians or Ecuadorians.
Well, I mean, what that suggests to me is we have a more diverse population than we acknowledge.
Yes.
And when you have a category that lumps so many people together, I mean, 44,000 people, I mean, that's more than, non-Hispanic whites. So it would be great to take that 44,000 and break it down and see who those people are and how do they self-identify, and then where did they go when they left Washington Heights. But that's yet another study.
Right. If we have time, I can ask my people in the Dominican Studies Institute to disaggregate the other Hispanic for you. It's very interesting and fun sometimes to look at those groups and because those groups are there, and there's a reason when the population decrease. I agree. The other, I think, slides that I wanted to show before I call on my people is and this is again to dissipate the understanding now the narrative that Dominicans are not here to stay. If you look at this one, this have to do with naturalization, and the only thing that this graph tells you is that the longer they live here, the higher their propensity to become naturalized citizens of the U.S. So here you have a group that is very large, that is growing, that has a presence for a long, long time here, and that at the same time, when the opportunity arrives, set roots, very strong roots in the country, in the city, as well as in the neighborhood. What I wanted to do is to show you what we think it's the area that we would like to have designated as a Dominican Historical District. I'm gonna stop sharing my my screen so that I can ask Matthew to come in. Matthew, it's on the line, and so that you have an idea of what it is that we are doing, and then you can guide us and advise us. And I tell you the rationale for selecting specifically that. I'm stopping sharing. So Matthew will show you a lovely map that he has done in the designated area that we are proposing.
Hello, everyone. Good evening.
Hi, Matthew. Give me a second. Natalie, do you have your hand up for this? Natalie?
No, I think I raised it just when you were talking about the Caribbean Cultural Center programs, just to remind people that since we can't attend tonight's, you can see them on Facebook Live once they put up the recorded version.
Yeah, and they have another one on the 13th, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
This summer we missed what they did in Lincoln Center. I mean, geez, unfortunately, but.
Okay, so Matthew, do you need to share your screen?
Yes, I'll need to be able to.
So Paola, can you allow Matthew Santana to share his screen?
Sure.
You're all set.
Perfect, thank you. All right, what I'll be showing here is the visualization of this proposed Dominican Historic District. You'll see the black border denoting, so to speak, the parameters we decided where exactly we cut off said border. All the icons on the inside represent various places we're highlighting. Mind you, there's still many more to be added. This is a work in progress, especially icons. But it's to give an idea of what exactly we're trying to go for here.
Matthew, let me help you here. Okay, so the geographic boundaries of the proposed historic district were adjusted to reflect the following, and that is a Dominican presence in this particular area that spans, of course, over 50 years, which is one of the requirements of this application to be eligible. But in their case, as we will show you in a minute, it's definitely over 50 years, over 100 years. So we wanted to encapsulate, that longevity. And also we wanted to create an area that you were going to find Dominican symbols, let's say, a higher number of Dominican symbols per square mile as compared to the other areas where they are. So what I'm saying is that the Dominican people will be distributed along Washington Heights from 155 to all the way to 30, right? I'm from north to south, including Inwood. But per square mile, this is the area where you have more Dominican symbols than in any other area. And so we decided arbitrarily then to create those borders that I'm sure that you are surprised and that we have sliced Washington Heights in this way, but it was following that rationale. Everywhere that you go in these blocks, which I think it's about 40 blocks, I tell you the borders exactly. The proposed Dominican Historic District will extends from south to north, from 155th Street to Diamond Street, basically 200 in this case, and from east to west, from the Harlem River Drive Parkway to Riverside Drive. It's stopping at 169th Street and crossing over Broadway. That's what we are proposing, and this was designed by Matthew, who is a student. So don't you go and think that he's a whole architect. He's still a student. So what we are doing with this map, and not only describing and writing, and also documenting with photographs, which want to show in a minute, but also creating this virtual interactive map for the future. So that whenever we finish with this project, you will have, if we are approved, of course, it will be called a Dominican Historic District, but if hopefully we will, with the help of you guys and everybody else. If we are not, this map will remain, and people will go be able to click and then find some of these items that we are describing. Matthew, could you please show the cluster of buildings, Ellis Island building? Among the things that we have put in here, it's a cluster of buildings that goes back to the 1900 and with Dominicans residents that lived in those places. Some of these people, are notable people. I don't know, Jensen, if we will be able to share the Malagon sister, that clip, if you can prepare that in 30 seconds as we continue to talk. Some people, Dominicanos who live in Washington Heights, will be at the level of the Malagon sister, right? Who appeared in the Ed Sullivan Show in 1959. Okay, I think a little bit earlier than that, right? But some other will be merchants, and some other will be teachers, and some other will be nurses, and some other will be regular people. In our case, for the Ellis Island people, we simply just close all of them together, right? And we show you now the buildings where they live. Can we do that? In order for us to do that, we will need to stop sharing, right? And then Jensen will have to show the photographs, right? Okay. Yeah, going to the map. I'm sorry, I didn't want you to start sharing your map, Matthew. Could you share the map, Matthew, please? So in this corridor, or you're gonna find schools, you're gonna find parks, you're gonna find historic businesses owned by Dominican people, or you're gonna find businesses that have Dominican name. You're gonna have places like the United Palace. Of course, it's not a Dominican place. What we are signaling in the United Palace is when Dominicans began to have a presence in that place, that it's, you know, it was very long time. So you're gonna have things of that nature, things that are very, that are Dominicans, owned by Dominicans, and things that are not owned by Dominican, but owned by others. But the Dominican people have a very close relationship with that historic place. And as you know, the United Palace, I think, I don't know whether the United Palace has become a landmark already.
It is.
Okay. Yeah, that's another thing that we had done, but it's all in writing, and you got it. I have to apologize for my memory. I'm not as I used to when I was young. Now it's everything, it's particularly with a computer. So all of these icons that you see represent different things, and perhaps, you know, if you have a chance, just look at the legend. We have found political institutions established in Washington Heights, and by that we mean it's not the Democratic Party, it's not the Republican Party, but it's an institution, it's a place that was created specifically to do politics. When we will be interested on this, that was created specifically to do politics against Trujillo, and it's right there, located in Washington Heights. The institution is no longer there, but it was there and had that history in registering the mentality of the people, both here as well as in the Dominican Republic. So what I wanted to show, Matthew, is there anything else that you like to pinpoint on this map? The beauty of this map. This, the platform that we are using, it's a platform that was created by City College. So they will be very happy when they see that we are using something that the college created. And then everything else inside, it's our creation. Anything you wanted to pinpoint, Matthew, on this map that you're very proud of?
Two things, just to clarify, at least one, the software we're using is actually ArcGIS, but CCNY has a provisional license to be able to use it. And we take advantage of it.
Okay, thank you for.
Also, with regards to the map,
Could I ask, do you include in this there's a parking garage on the south side of 174th Street between, I believe it's between St. Nicholas and Audubon Avenues. And it was a meeting place in the early 80s where the local Dominican leaders would gather, and where they, I think, first began talking about creating Dominican organizations and getting involved in Dominican politics. I think it was the place where Alianza Dominicana was first conceived of. Is that one of the...
we have, Simon, we have Alianza Dominicana, but definitely not that history that you are talking about, because as, I mean, this is, and I'm glad, you know, that Waldemar, who is a young historian, it's in the call as well. Not that history. Definitely Alianza, part of the history of Alianza Dominicana, you know, but not the particular details that you're giving us, that the garage, for instance, in 180. No, that we don't.
It was on 174th Street. It was
100. No, we don't have that.
It was owned by a man named, well, I don't know, Pepe Cuesta, and his son, Eddie Cuesta,
I know
is,
Eddie.
is still active in the Dominican community. To me, that's a major point of historic interest for the Dominican community.
Definitely. And what occurred to me is to share, Matthew, is to share this map with Eddie Cuesta. I know him, I mean, the head of Dominicanos USA,
Yes.
a good friend of the Dominican Studies Institute, but I did not know that story.
Yeah,
And
please,
so-
please let him tell you about the significance of his father's garage.
Oh my God. Oh God. Because you see, these are the stories that, you know, that tell the other story of a place, right? Not necessarily what you find in books, but what people still holding. So Matthew, we need to share this with Eddie Cuesta, this map.
Yes, definitely.
Right. Qué bien, qué bien. This is really good. Anything, Matthew, that you like to highlight?
Specifically about each location, it's clickable and you get a small description, and at least for most of them, an image showing what the what the place actually is. Mind you, again, still work in progress. I've literally, even to the point of just before this meeting, still been editing a lot of the info here. But I'm pretty happy with what we got so far, and we're still adding more locations by the day.
Could you go back to the icon for the Audubon Ballroom?
This one? I'm sorry. This one might click.
No, it'll be.
We might not have it.
No, you did, but I think when you clicked on it, you had a picture of the United Palace, but you had the title of the Audubon Palace.
Adding things up to this day.
Yeah.
It's at 165th and Broadway.
Can you look at it? Because though the place might
Yeah,
be
right there, right there.
Yeah, so that's not the Audubon Ballroom.
No, but he had it a moment.
Right, but it says Audubon Ballroom, San Juan, but if you scroll down.
Yeah, I just added the wrong image. I can fix that easily.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's the United Palace.
Yeah, sorry about that.
Would you be able to share this with us? Can we have a chance to look it over?
Definitely. We beg you for your input on this. This is a work in progress. And remember, the team is composed by young researchers and people that are still students. So please, we would like very much for your input on this thing. Anything else, Matthew, that you like to share?
Nothing else at this moment. I think I've covered pretty much everything.
Okay, so you're gonna be.
Let me ask another question. Because Steve Simon, used to be the chief of staff for Councilman Michaels for more than 20 years, representing this area. So he probably has lots of stories to tell. But Maria Luna, who is, a board member and the former board chair, probably also has a lot of, stories about the places that were important. And have you spoken with her?
No, and it's a woman that we respect dearly. She's considered the dean of Dominican politics in the U.S., but it's a great idea. Maria Luna as well, Waldemar. Thank you. Definitely, because she will have stories that you cannot find in books. All of the stuff that you have here, it's book stuff, right? Nothing like that. She is somebody who comes to the Dominican Studies Institute events frequently. I mean, when we were able to do so. But thank you for that advice, Maria and Eddie. Yeah, definitely. Jensen, would you like to? We're gonna show you a little bit of the No, I don't think we're going to do that. We have identified, I think, over 1,700 structures within these parameters that we have delineated, and all of the structures are being described in about 2 sentences, 1.5 sentence or 2 sentences.
Okay.
So it's a very lengthy document. Each particular structure, whether it's a garage, or whether it's a park, or whether it's a residential building, or whether it's a business, and this is following, of course, the documentation put out by city planning. So in addition to this, so it's also that other part of the application that requires the description of all of the buildings, all of the structures. Let me take it back. All of the structures within the parameters. We are doing that as well. We are also creating photographs of all of the structures to accompany this map. And if you can stop sharing, Matthew, so that can help, they can hopefully give.
And I just want to point out, we're running a little tight on time. So any critical points that you want to make, please make sure you get them in.
Okay, basically the other stuff that we are doing is documenting this with photographs. And that might take, are you able to share that, Jensen, or not?
Good evening. Can I get permission to share my screen?
Yeah, I think Paola, if you could let Jensen Ortiz share his screen.
Yeah, 1 second.
So it's a very large
Go ahead.
document, because it requires this level of detail on all of the structures that are contained within the parameters. And so that's where we are at now.
Dr. Hernandez, which set of photographs would you like to showcase?
I think the Ellis Island building will be fantastic if you have them. We have distinguished, you know, when the buildings were constructed, all of them, and have also made that part of the application as well. This is, I don't know who lives in there, but I know we don't have time to share their story, but I tell you,
but I think, as Steve said, if you're able to share this with us, we would love to take a look at it and review it in detail and get back to you with probably lots of questions, comments, and suggestions.
Okay, okay. This is well taken. We will give you stories such as the, you know, Maurice Paniewski, who came in 1911 from the Dominican Republic, and then the person moved in 565 West, 162nd. I don't think that that's the building. And then, you know, his daughter married somebody, and we have little stories like that of people who lived in the area Dominicano and then have other members of their family. So showcasing the root of in the history of people in the neighborhood, and claiming that neighborhood as part of who we are and part of the contribution of the Dominican people in the U.S. and of course New York City.
And just to get to the logistics of it, so is this something you have to file with SHPO? I mean, who takes care of a non-contiguous historic district?
In terms of the process, we are very young. We have done lots of research in terms of the national register, who's there, what do you need to do, and we were surprised that what we wanted to do, which is declare a place based upon history and cultural legacy, that we don't have many of those in the country as a whole.
Yeah, but there are a few.
Oh, yes, there are a few. And I think we list them in our application, but very few, because even in the case of some African-American neighborhoods that we have found, you know, when you go, there's a set of properties. They are identifying with African-American, right? And this is not the case. We are not claiming property in itself. So it makes it a little bit difficult for us, at least because we're not expert on this. But I believe that what we needed to do there's an office that we need to submit the application, and we are getting in contact with them as well.
Right. It's, you know, when we first discussed this concept of a non-contiguous historic district, you know, we were all curious on how that worked, and there were a few examples. I don't think any of them were here in New York State, but they do exist. But it strikes me that, you know, there's a path to a destination, but along that path, there are a number of things that you can do with the information. And I see, if you develop this into some kind of a, you know, presentation teaching tool, I could see our Youth and Education Committee being very interested in it and having it shared in schools. I could see, you know, Parks and Cultural Affairs being interested in it as an exhibit that, you know, is looking at it from the cultural affairs perspective. So there are a number of things, you know, you can do with this. We have the Uptown Art Stroll every year, and if maybe, you know, at City College, if one of the theaters or a gallery had this on a large screen or had a series of discussions of this. So there's a number of things you could do with the information along the way to getting designation.
Okay. Yes. It would be, I mean, for us, the more people learn about the history of Dominicans in this place, and the better, and the least the possibility of people forgetting. And you know, the goal here is that we don't rely only on ourselves to remember who we are, but also rely on others to remind us of that history as well. So the more possibilities of sharing this, whether it's the school system, with these festivals that we have in the community, whether it's the internet, because we have a project that is called Dominican Landmarks, and this registers things of this nature worldwide. And we have to tell you that it's a very popular project. People do click on these things, and they learn that there is a park named after Dominican person in Belgium or in Germany. So people like to see pictures, and people like to see small history as compared to, you know, lengthy books. I think that, you know, your suggestion, yes, it's going to help us, and it's going to benefit the project at the end of the day, which is, you know, preserving this legacy and sharing this legacy with others.
Right. I think this has been wonderful, and I would say that you should plan to come back to us in a few months with an update. We'd be, you know, very interested in that. Lori, I want to thank you once again for making the introduction.
Pleasure. Thank you. Thank you for those tips. We will follow up on them.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
So with that, I'd like to move to the next item on our agenda now that it's 8:55, but we're not going to rush it per se. For land use and the capital and expense budget, I circulated two things. I circulated to the committee within the last few days, the expense and capital items that we proposed last year, that each of which were ranked within the top 5 by the board for both capital and expense. So that's great. I mean, land use typically has very few items. You have, you know, usually one of each, and last year it was a carryover. We modified some of the language because, you know, the city got back to us and they weren't clear on what we were asking, or, you know, they thought it was partially done. So we clarified it and resubmitted it. And I think those 2 items are still relevant, and we probably want to, you know, submit them again as sort of not continuing support, because it's not clear that they've received support, but, you know, submit them as items for consideration once again. The expense item that we had called for the dedicated additional planning staff to work with CB12 and local residents to formulate and implement a neighborhood-based contextual plan. I would change that a bit, particularly given some of the things we're talking about. I would add that we want them to work with us to update the 2007 neighborhood planning and land use study that we undertook with City College, by the way, in addition to then update that and have that be the basis for formulating and implementing, you know, a plan. Because as we've learned from the discussion of 857 and other things, there are things that we've talked about, things that were in the plan that are still relevant today that city planning or landmarks have not acted on. And so it makes sense to take a planning study that's now more than a decade old and to refresh it, and for us to be able to do that with the assistance of some, you know, professional planning staff. So I would think that's an item that we want to massage a bit, but keep. And then the capital item, we were asking for the city to allocate capital funds to support a planning and development initiative in Washington Heights and Inwood, whereby any vacant city-owned lots or buildings were packaged in an RFP and then put out for, you know, requests for development to do scattered site and infill affordable housing. We had that before, and they said, well, it wasn't a capital request. So we added specifically, well, obviously, we want you to allocate capital grants to it in order to facilitate that. I would say that, you know, that is still a relevant item from the land use and planning perspective. I don't think they've done anything to identify, you know, vacant city-owned land and buildings that are sitting fallow. And I think we've been talking about this for years, since Scott Stringer was borough president, that, you know, the city can map the land, and in fact he did, and then they need to do something with it to address the affordable housing crisis here. I would say that capital item we also want to keep. I would like, you know, any input from, you know, the board members on those 2, and if there any other expense or capital items from the land use perspective that we should propose.
I could just say, I think the capital item is pretty wordy. I don't think we need to include this clause you have after city-owned lots and buildings, or lots and buildings purchased or otherwise acquired by the city.
Well, I think someone named Steve Simon added that last year.
No, I would never. It makes no sense. So I would just delete that language between the 2 commas.
But I mean, in terms of, so conceptually, we're saying these 2 we want to keep. We might want to massage the text, which is why I sent it to everyone to review. And we still have time to do that, because I don't think our meeting isn't until another couple weeks from now, so we can clean it up. But please get any comments well in advance of that. Is there anything else, you know, Vivian, Chris, Omar, Rosie, you know, Jim, items that we should add, or do we say that we want to keep these 2, clean them up a bit and propose them? I can't hear you because you're all muted.
I think these are okay.
Yeah, I would move that we adopt these 2 as our committee's budget requests.
I second.
Who second?
I agree.
I did.
Rosie.
So all committee members in favor, raise your hand so I could see them. I can't see Chris. I can't see Omar. can't see
I'm raising
Rosie.
it with the blue virtual
okay.
hand.
So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we're unanimous. There's no opposed, no abstaining. Okay, thank you. And I would see that, you know, members of the public who wish to vote can also vote, but I would also say that other board members present, if you would like to vote on it, you can as well. So I will start with other board members. If you would care to vote on the adoption of these two for land use, let me know. And I think we had at least one other board member, although she may be gone now. So then I will look at, I saw for participants, attendees. Okay, so this is a little difficult. So I'll just go with the committee vote that we have. Is there any old business? Is there any new business? I know we had Lori Tobias and Marielle. Is there anything that you wanted to, either of you want to share with the committee while we have you?
I was just listening here today. Sorry. I was just like listening to what you all were saying and listening to the presentations.
That's okay. I just, since you were here, I said, do you want
I appreciate that because not everyone does that, and sometimes we have something to say and then people stop the call. So thank you.
You're welcome. And Lori?
Yes, hi. I just want to say that it was an inspired thought on the part of Congressman Espaillat to begin this intensive work with the Dominican Studies Institute in order to, frankly, hand over and the project in its detail, the granularities, you can see it's evolving, and they will benefit from more help from the committee and from the whole community board. And the idea is really ultimately to brand this part of the Heights as, you know, as little Dominican, as the little Dominican Republic of New York. And that's, you know, the end game. Dr. Hernandez and her team have been put in touch directly through me with SHPO, and they will be following up with the application. Things are complicated because of COVID in terms of the SHPO staff walking the district, but with time, hopefully all of this will fall into place.
Okay. I mean, Rosie and Omar, I see you have your hands raised. Is it for this or is it for voting?
Oh, I was raising my hand for voting.
Okay, so you can lower it. Anything else under new business? If not, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. It's 9:05.
Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Third.
Thank you all. Take care.
Hi.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye all.
Bye.
Goodbye.
Good night.